This video is sponsored by Factor. While 2024 might not have been the biggest film year in cinema history, reeling from the final effects of COVID and the Sag Aftra strikes that really impacted the release schedule, that doesn't mean we didn't see some awesome visual effects throughout the year. From little-known films to big blockbusters, let's take a look at some of the best visual effects of 2024, as well as some that are just downright interesting. You don't have to look very far into 2024 to find some of the best visual effects to grace IMAX screens in quite some time. Dune Part 2 earned its comparison to Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back for a reason. It built upon the base created by the first Dune film in 2021 and improved greatly upon it, with some inspired cinematography and composition from cinematographer Greg Fraser, who seems to just turn every film he works on into a masterpiece, which is saying something while working on genres that have had a lot of their originality stripped from them. But his cinematography mixed with practical effects and some beautiful VFX made Dune Part 2 really stand out this year. The VFX company DNEG, who has worked on countless films over the years, created a ton of memorable digitally rendered sequences in the film, and it's hard to pick out just one memorable scene in the film because there are so many of them. But perhaps none more memorable than the sandworms emerging from the sandstorm right as the final battle takes place. Both the composition, sense of scale and weight, and visual conception is just perfect. It could be seeing this in IMAX and really feeling that the impact of the sandworms hitting the sand adds a little bit extra bias to this pick for me, but it's a scene that really has stuck in my head from multiple viewings. Because there's so many to pick from, tell us what your favorite VFX shot was from the film in the comments below.
Well, truthfully, I thought I might become the 13th apostle.
The Book of Clarence is an interesting film that I would be fascinated to know if any subscribers or viewers saw this year, but this is probably one of the more simple and easier visual effects I'll shout out this year. But I really liked it as it signaled right away how offbeat this film would be from the very start. This film is a satisfyingly bizarre reimagining of the biblical story of Jesus, but focused on someone who tries to capitalize on the fame of Jesus by claiming to be the Messiah, as well as somehow stumbling into performing miracles. But the main character gets this idea to become a Messiah when he smokes opium and begins to float in the air. After floating for some time and likely getting some sort of revelation from the drug-induced journey he is on, a light bulb appears over his head.
I think you are having an idea.
It's an absolutely ridiculous scene and is aided by practical effects with wire work being done as well, but it is still one of those scenes that is stuck in my head, and not in a bad way like the VFX from Madam Web. It's just fun.
What am I supposed to call you?
I have never had a name. Would it help you to give me one?
Next up is Adam Sandler's emotional support spider in Spaceman. MPC would handle the effects for this film, and it really is a fascinating sci-fi film, and one I didn't really expect to see from Adam Sandler. It wasn't exactly a barn burner when it came to critics and audience scores, but the CGI spider really stands out. I mean, I don't know how they made a spider a sad spider, but they did.
I was not entirely honest with you before.
How about what?
I think this is one of those circumstances where the setting really helps with creating an almost entirely CGI character. The spaceship already gets the viewer into the right mindset for there to be some surreal aspects to what happens on film. I don't know if that necessarily prepares you for a spider to appear, but it just works for this film. They really did a great job of giving a spider so much emotion, and spoiler for those who don't know the ending, it dies holding onto a jar of peanut butter. What a perfect way to go, talking some philosophy and eating peanut butter. But speaking of a jar of peanut butter, I'm actually pretty hungry. Thankfully, with today's sponsor, Factor, I can just throw lunch into the oven or microwave and keep on working, filming and editing this video, while a dietitian-approved meal heats up in the other room. What am I having for my editing lunch break? A filet mignon, of course. If you have a meal or two a day that you find difficult to plan like I do, mostly just because I get distracted by editing a lot, Factor can take the stress out of that part of your day with already prepared meals sent straight to your door with 35 different options to choose from per week. Or if you're like me and you just want to get the filet mignon for every meal, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either. With Factor, it really is helpful to A, not starve because you forgot what time it was, and B, eliminate the prep time, cleanup, and junk food choices you make when you come out of an editing binge. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, who we have worked with in the past, and now you guys can enjoy both brands at a discount through the channel. Now, head to my link to get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders with the code FRAME50. Now let's get back to some VFX. Believe me, I get that Rebel Moon is an odd one on this list, as it could count as some of the most generic visual effects, bad visual effects, but it's also spectacular at the same time. This somewhat confusing series by director Zack Snyder felt like it had a lot of promise, but inevitably fell pretty flat, and at times overplays into the visual sensibilities of its director way too much. It's sad because there are some truly great sequences and visuals throughout the film that are breathtaking, but the slow motion effect is just taken too far, and you end up with shots like these. Despite all the bloat and odd choices made for the series, you do have to add some of the scenes in this to the best VFX category of 2024, even if some of it also ends up on the worst list in our next video. Director Westball did all of us film nerds a real one when he released this film without CGI and just the mocap suits.
Both of your hands and both of your feet. That's 4 times the safety.
There are some that liked this film less than the trilogy that came before it, especially the last two that were directed by Matt Reeves, and received rave reviews from both critics and audiences. But personally, I think I got more immersed in this fourth film the most. While the CGI apes are visually impressive throughout the previous trilogy, I think the time difference really helps to sell it better. We're in a time far away from the trappings of modern civilization and dropped into this sort of dystopian world, just not one inhabited by a lot of humans. Given director Westball's VFX background and his penchant for dystopian worlds, the digital worlds of this film, blended with the on-location shoots they did, have some absolutely stunning sequences and deserve to be recognized among the best visual effects of 2024. Tom Hanks' career has seen some fascinating VFX milestones, from looking like he shook President Kennedy's hand in Forrest Gump, becoming half the characters in the motion-controlled horror film Polar Express.
Well, you coming?
And now with his film in 2024, Here, a film that tells the story of a couple through multiple different periods of time, all in one living room in New Jersey. To accomplish the de-aging trick, they would use a tool called Metaphysics Live, a generative AI tool that would show them live their changed appearance during filming. Metaphysics visual effects supervisor Joe Platt spoke to the speed of this process, saying, "The high-resolution model will still take a second to pop out the frame, which is crazy different from the 25 hours of ray tracing that we come from in visual effects." Despite this interesting and perhaps controversial use of AI and visual effects, the film feels like it was a bit more focused on these visual tricks than on a storyline. Metaphysics tools had also been used in 2024 on another controversial VFX scene, which I'm sure you all remember in Alien Romulus, something we will get to later on.
This theater isn't built to withstand what's coming!
When talking about visual effects from 2024, you can't leave out the follow-up to an original CGI groundbreaking giant in Twisters. Twisters takes all the technology created in the last 20 years since the original Twister and gives us a film full of visually stunning looking tornadoes. The team at ILM would shoot tons of reference footage to make sure they were getting accurate cloud formations and tornadoes, as well as the production using practical effects like jet engines to get the wind speeds looking just right for their sets. While there are some extreme lengths they went to in certain scenes and tornadoes that kind of start looking overly CGI and some are blockbuster-like, it's really hard to judge. Tornadoes in real life have an uncanny valley feeling to them already. When you look at real pictures and videos of them, they don't look real. So in that sense, it's hard to judge CGI tornadoes. But to me, the most convincing and terrifying scene is right at the beginning of the film. The mix of practical and digital effects really pulls it off convincingly in this particular scene. You don't see anything, or the wide shot of the unexpectedly large tornado, and it works like a good horror film, leaving you scared of the thing that you can't see. To me, the impact of the tornado loses its effectiveness the more you see it throughout the film. But this first scene of the film is incredible, and one of the best film openings of 2024.
I came from outside, from another silo.
What silo?
Building on an impressive season 1, Silo season 2 keeps it up, especially with the visual effects. Apple TV sneakily is becoming one of the best streamers, with so many great shows that are not only well written, but are visually stunning. Shows like For All Mankind, The Foundation, Severance, and more. It's incredible to see the visual effects they are able to pull off on these shows, and Silo is one of them. The thing I find most impressive is just the Silo setting itself, with great practical sets playing together with blue screen and CGI set extensions. You get a sense watching this show that they have to be using these effects, but they do it in a way that is not distracting from the story, and while you're watching, you don't really feel like you're looking at green screen or set extensions the entire time. It's really impressive, and it really immerses you in the show. So beyond just the VFX team, I would also say congrats to the set design team as well. Both played such an important role in this series.
Find Arthur Fleck guilty as charged.
Look, there are a lot of strong opinions on Joker Folia Due, but I mean, come on guys, this explosion? Maybe it was the lack of much action throughout the film, but this definitely was one of my favorite explosions in a film this year, and I just wanted to quickly insert it right here. Man, that Deadpool and Wolverine opening. I can't think of another example of where using CGI so egregiously works so well. That's not to say that the visual effects are bad in this opening sequence, but it's the combination of the absurd fourth wall breaking character of Deadpool that allows you to go all out on the comic book craziness with the effects. As John Likens, the creative director at Method, put it, my favorite aspect of the Deadpool films is his ability to break the fourth wall and become ultra aware that he's in the middle of an action scene in a Marvel movie. I felt strongly that if Deadpool consciously knows this fight scene is being cut to bye, he might just feel inclined to bust out some of the iconic NSYNC dance moves while killing off the bad guys. It's hard not to throw this on the list considering the creativity involved in the sequence. If you haven't seen the 3D animated series ARCANE, you're missing out. Much like Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, it merges the world of animation and VFX into its own unique style, but it had serious financial backing to allow the creators ample time to make it into something spectacular. In what is reported as the largest budget ever for an animated series, it spent $250 million to produce and promote the 18-episode series. Riot co-founder Mark Merrill thought of the price tag this way: we're more than comfortable with the spend it took to deliver a show that was worthy of our players' time. And that budget more than delivered with incredibly high ratings from the critics and audiences, with the first season the second highest demanded show in the first 30 days in 2021. It took a total of 9 years to bring this series to Netflix, 6 years for the first season and 3 to finish up the second season. And that had a lot to do with the effort put into making every shot and scene as perfect as possible. Alexis, who collaborated with Riot Games, said they wanted to create a visual style that would create something that felt real, that felt raw, a bit gruesome sometimes. It was not what you would see in other animated projects. They often are watered down. They wanted the characters to feel very graphic, to have imperfections. Animated projects like these don't always get the credit they deserve for the visual effects they implement, and I wanted to make sure we got them on our list for the best in 2024, because they deserve to be there.
Full name and occupation, please. Marie Rains Carradine, ma'am. I should be free to go now, right?
Alien Romulus is praised a lot for its practical effects it employed throughout the film, and rightfully so. A lot of those elements really keep this film grounded, but we shouldn't forget some of the beautiful CGI throughout the film. There are a couple of elements in particular that I wanted to point out. The first being the acid zero-G simulation that the protagonists have to make their way through in an incredibly tense situation. In a story sense, it was such a great idea to use the acid blood associated with the Alien series and do something fresh with it. From a visual perspective, it works really well because you're not trying to create something that exists in the real world, or at least something that audiences can compare it to. That gives you some space, pun intended, to really go for it visually and not to take your audience out of the film. Even still, it's easier said than done, and these liquid simulations are pulled off convincingly. And when watching this scene, you really feel the tension, and that is aided in the fact that they graphically show you earlier in the film what can happen when you get the acid on you, which was also achieved through visual effects. It's a great little foreshadowing trick they do in the story, showing you the horrifying nature of what can happen in a dark and easier to pull off situation, so you have that in the back of your mind while they're trying to dodge this substance in zero gravity. The second visual effect in this film that really stands out as one of the best of the year are the space sequences. From the intricately detailed planet surface with clouds and lightning to the shimmering rings around the planet, and then the beautiful but destructive sequence where the space station crashes into the planetary rings. It's probably some of the more memorable space scenes that I've seen since like watching Ad Astra. While 95% of this film is masterfully done with digital effects, there is one aspect of this film we added to the worst VFX list for 2024. That is in our next video, which you can watch right here. And be sure to let us know what you think some of the best VFX shots of the year were. We would love to hear from you.